Welcome to Forbidden Texts. What you are about to see may shock you. It may surprise you, but will definitely challenge everything you thought you knew. Stick around until the end to discover the forbidden knowledge that they don't want you to have.
They don't tell you this about awakening. You imagine enlightenment as this grand, euphoric moment, bliss, love, divine connection. But what if I told you that the real awakening feels more like death? Like the ground beneath your feet has disappeared, like everything you once believed was a lie. The moment you wake up is the moment the nightmare begins. Welcome to Forbidden Text, where we uncover hidden knowledge and forbidden wisdom. Most people are asleep, trapped in the illusion of the world, jobs, routines, distractions. They never question anything. They never feel the pull of something deeper. But you did. And that's why you're here. Because something cracked open inside you, something that made you start questioning everything. But instead of clarity, you were met with chaos. Your relationships started to fall apart. Your sense of self dissolved. But they never warn you about the dark night of the soul, the stage where everything falls apart before it can come back together. And this is where it gets terrifying. Because once you enter this phase, there's no going back. But why does this happen? Why does awakening feel like a breakdown instead of a breakthrough? And more importantly, how do you make it through without losing yourself completely? By the end of this, you'll understand exactly what's happening to you. You'll see why this darkness is not your enemy, but the initiation into something far greater. But first, let's expose the biggest lie about enlightenment, the illusion that traps so many seekers in an endless loop of suffering. They told you enlightenment was the end of suffering. That once you wake up, life becomes effortless, like stepping into some divine flow where everything just works out. They lied. Spirituality has been romanticized, sterilized, packaged, and sold as something soft and beautiful. But the truth, the real truth, is much darker. Because when you wake up, you don't just see the light, you also see the shadows. The illusions, the manipulations, the systems of control that have been keeping you blind your entire life. It doesn't last. Because awakening isn't just about seeing the truth of the world. It's about seeing the truth of yourself. And that's where the real suffering begins. The illusions don't just exist outside of you. They exist within you. Your beliefs, your identity, your ego, all of it built on shaky ground. And when that structure collapses, when you realize that everything you thought you were is just a story, what's left? For most people, this is where the panic sets in. Your mind fights back. Your old self refuses to die. It clings to what it knows, desperate to hold on to control, desperate to make sense of the chaos. But the harder you try to hold on, the more everything slips through your fingers. You start losing things, relationships, interests, your sense of purpose. People you once loved feel distant. Conversations feel shallow. This is the dark night of the soul. And no one prepares you for it. They tell you to raise your vibration, to trust the universe. But what do you do when the universe stops answering? When all the signs, all the synchronicities, all the magic just disappear? This isn't just depression. This isn't just a bad phase. This is spiritual death. And the question is, can you survive it? Because if you do, if you make it through this, if you endure what's coming, on the other side, something awakens that is more powerful than anything you can imagine. But before you can be reborn, you have to understand why this happens in the first place. And that starts with answering one question: what is the dark night of the soul? Really, the dark night of the soul isn't just a metaphor. It's not just some poetic phrase for hard times. It's an initiation, a breaking of reality, a point of no return where everything you thought you knew collapses, and you're left alone in the ruins. The term comes from the 16th century mystic street. It's something that every person who walks the true path of awakening will face. This is not some temporary phase. It's the systematic destruction of your ego. Because here's the thing, your old self cannot walk through the door to real enlightenment. It has to die. And the dark night of the soul is the funeral. It starts subtly. At first, you just feel off, disconnected, maybe a little lost. Then the cracks get bigger. The things you used to love start to feel meaningless. People who used to energize you now drain you. You feel like an alien walking through a world that doesn't make sense anymore. And then, one day, it all falls apart. Maybe it happens in one sudden, catastrophic moment. A loss, a betrayal, an event that rips your life to shreds. Or maybe it's slow, like sand slipping through your fingers, day after day, until you realize that everything is gone. It's not just some poetic phrase for hard times. It's an initiation, a breaking of reality, a point of no return where everything you thought you knew collapses, and you're left alone in the ruins. The term comes from the 16th century mystic Saint John of the Cross, who described it as a period of total spiritual desolation, where the presence of God disappears, where all sense of connection, purpose, and meaning is stripped away. But this isn't just some old religious concept. It's something that every person who walks the true path of awakening will face. This is not some temporary phase. It's the systematic destruction of your ego. Because here's the thing, your old self cannot walk through the door to real enlightenment. It has to die. And the dark night of the soul is the funeral. It starts subtly. At first, you just feel off, disconnected, maybe a little lost. Then the cracks get bigger. The things you used to love start to feel meaningless. People who used to energize you now drain you. Or maybe it's slow, like sand slipping through your fingers, day after day, until you realize that everything is gone. The things that used to give you purpose, empty. The beliefs that held your world together, shattered. The divine presence you once felt, silent. No guidance. And then it happens. The part that no one can prepare you for. The moment when the emptiness becomes unbearable. At first, the pain is loud. The loss, the confusion, the panic. It screams through your entire being. But then, slowly, something even worse settles in. Silence. Not peace. Not clarity. Just a vast, cold, endless void. Everything that used to make you feel connected, gone. The presence you used to call God, nowhere to be found. You try to pray, but your words feel like they're disappearing into an abyss. You search for signs, synchronicities, anything, but the universe stops responding. But when you realize that even the divine has abandoned you, every spiritual experience you ever had, every sign, every vision, every moment of connection, now feels like a delusion. Like something you made up to comfort yourself. And the more you try to reach for it, the more it slips away. This is what the ancient mystics called the divine absence. The stage where the universe stops holding your hand. Because up until now, you were still relying on something external. A feeling. A presence. Some kind of guidance. But the dark night strips that away too. Why? Because real awakening means standing alone. No crutches. No safety nets. No comforting illusions. Just you. And this is the part where most people break. This is where they turn back, run to distractions, try to numb themselves, anything to avoid the unbearable emptiness. Because when the divine disappears, so does all meaning. You wake up every day with no purpose, no motivation, no reason to even move. You sit in silence, waiting for something, anything, to bring life back to you. That there is no meaning, that you are completely, utterly alone. And if you can't face that, you stay lost. You keep running in circles, searching for something to fill the void. You get trapped in the endless cycle of seeking but never finding. But if you do face it, if you stand there in the nothingness, with no hope, no guidance, no answers, something happens. Something shifts. Because at the very bottom of the abyss, in the absolute darkness, a door appears. And on the other side, something you never expected, something that changes everything. But you can't see it yet. Not until you face yourself. And that's where we go next. And then, there's nothing left to fight. No more illusions. No more grasping. No more desperate prayers for something to come and save you. Most people will do anything to avoid this moment. They'll distract themselves, drown in substances, run back to the world they once rejected. Anything to avoid the raw, unbearable nothingness of existence.
A quick message. This space has become something truly special for many of us. A community of people on a shared journey of spiritual growth, healing, and awakening. Your comments and stories inspire me every day, and it's clear there's so much more we can create together, especially since this path can feel lonely at times. That's why we've created a spiritual space on Patreon, a sanctuary for deeper connection, exclusive content, and meaningful conversations with others from this channel who share your journey. Together, we can build something uplifting, authentic, and spiritually powerful. If this resonates with you and you'd like to be part of something bigger, whatever you're going through, you'll find the link in the description or pinned in the comments. Your membership not only helps support the channel, but also helps grow this beautiful community. Let's create something amazing together.
But if you don't run, if you just sit in the silence, something begins to shift. Because when you let everything go, when you finally stop searching, when you give up the need for meaning, purpose, even for salvation, that's when something new begins to emerge. At first, it's subtle, a flicker, a presence, not external, not something outside of you, but something deep within. Something that was always there. You start to realize that the thing you were searching for, the guidance, the answers, the divine, it was never something outside of you. It was never something that could be given or taken away. It was you, buried under all the layers of identity, belief, expectation, hidden beneath all the things you thought you were. The dark night of the soul wasn't here to destroy you. It was here to strip away everything you are not. And now, for the first time, you see clearly. The universe never abandoned you. You don't need validation, external proof, reassurance. You don't need a crutch to stand on. Because you are the foundation. And this is where the true awakening begins. Not in some blissful euphoria. Not in divine visions or magical synchronicities. But in a quiet, unshakable knowing that no matter what happens, no matter how dark things get, no matter what you lose, you are. And that is the most powerful thing of all. Because now, nothing can break you. Nothing can shake you. Nothing can pull you back into the illusion. You don't just believe, you know. And that is the moment you stop being a seeker and become something else entirely. You become free. The dark night was never your enemy. It was the fire that forged you. And now, standing in the ashes, is something unrecognizable. Not enlightened. Not all knowing. Not floating on some higher plane. Just aware. You don't need to force meaning onto things anymore. You don't need to label experiences as good or bad. You no longer see life as something happening to you, but something unfolding through you. You realize now that everything, the suffering, the loss, the unbearable silence, wasn't some cruel punishment. It was a rebuilding. Because the moment you let go, the moment you accepted the void instead of fighting it, something changed. The fear disappeared. The need for control vanished. And for the first time, you felt something that no spiritual book, no guru, no philosophy could ever truly describe. Freedom. Not the kind of freedom people chase, not money, not power, not the illusion of choice in a broken system. Real freedom. The kind that comes when you have nothing left to lose, nothing left to protect, nothing left to prove. Because when you walk through the dark night of the soul and come out the other side, you realize something no one else does. There is nothing to fear. Not loss, not pain, not death, because you already died. And yet, here you are, stronger, wiser, untouchable. Now, you don't just survive the chaos of the world, you move through it like a ghost, untouched by the illusions that trap everyone else. Life stops fighting you. Everything that once felt like a battle, the search for purpose, the struggle for identity, the endless need to find yourself, it all dissolves. Because now, you understand the truth. You were never lost. You were never broken. You were never abandoned. You just had to be stripped down to nothing before you could see everything. And now, you don't just live. You exist. Fully. Freely. Fearlessly. And the world, it feels different now. Not because it changed, but because you did. And this is where everything shifts. Not in some grand, dramatic revelation. Not in a blinding flash of cosmic insight, but in the simplest, most profound realization of all. You were never meant to be saved. Not by God. Not by the universe. That's what they don't tell you when they sell you the fantasy of enlightenment. Awakening isn't about becoming something more. It's about becoming less, until there's nothing left but the raw, unfiltered truth of what you are. And what you are is limitless. No longer bound by old identities, old fears, old wounds. No longer a prisoner to the illusions of control, of certainty, of needing to understand everything. You don't need the universe to speak to you anymore. Because now, you listen to yourself. You don't need signs. Because now, you trust your own path. And the moment you step into this, when you truly accept that there is nothing outside of you that you need, something incredible happens. Life starts to move. Not because you forced it. Not because you begged for it. But because for the first time, you let it. The right people appear. The right opportunities unfold. Not because they were manifested or because you raised your vibration, but because you stopped blocking them with fear, doubt, and control. You surrendered. Not as a victim. Not in weakness. Most people never make it here. They get stuck in the suffering, in the identity crisis, in the endless search for something outside of themselves to save them. But you survived the abyss. Freedom. Real, unshakable, terrifying freedom. Because when you realize that there's nothing left to fear, no failure, no loss, not even death, you become unstoppable. You move differently. You speak differently. You see through people, through illusions, through the games the world plays. You are no longer controlled by the same things that keep everyone else trapped. The need to be liked, to fit in, to follow the script. You discard all of it. And in that moment, you become something rare. Something most people will never understand. A sovereign being. Not a seeker. Not a follower. Not someone waiting for the universe to send them a sign. You are the sign. You are the force. And now, life moves for you. Not because you control it. Not because you force it. But because you are finally in sync with it. No more resistance. No more searching. No more waiting for something to tell you who you are. You are. And that is the end of the dark night of the soul. Not because the pain is over. And now, you walk. Not with hesitation. Not with fear. Not with that old desperate need to find something outside of yourself. You walk with certainty. Because for the first time in your life, you trust the unknown. You don't need to know where you're going. You don't need a map. You don't need some cosmic force whispering in your ear, telling you that you're on the right path. Because now, you are the path. This is what the dark night was preparing you for. Not to become enlightened. Not to become untouchable. But to become real. To strip away every false layer, every illusion, every excuse you used to hide behind. And now, you stand with nothing but the truth. Your truth. It doesn't need to be explained. It doesn't need to be justified. It doesn't need anyone's approval. Because it simply is. You have walked through the fire. You have faced the void. You have watched yourself die and be reborn. And now, you live. Not in the way you did before. Not in the way the world tells you to. But in a way that is raw and free and completely your own. Because you are no longer lost. You are no longer seeking. You are. And that changes everything. And now, the world looks different. Not because it changed, but because you did. The illusions that once trapped you, you see through them. The fears that once ruled you, they no longer hold power. The expectations, the labels, the need to prove yourself, gone. You don't need validation anymore. You don't need permission. Because for the first time, you own yourself completely. This is what true awakening is. Not floating above the world, detached and untouched. Not escaping reality in some spiritual fantasy, but standing right here, in the middle of it all, fully present, fully alive, fully free. No more begging for signs. Because you realize now, the path isn't something outside of you. You are the path. Everything that happens from here is different. The way you move, the way you speak, the way you look at life. Because you no longer see life as something happening to you. You are life itself. You don't need to search anymore. Because you found what you were looking for. And it was never out there. It was never in the books, or the teachers, or the rituals, or the prayers. It was always inside of you. And now, you are untouchable. Not because nothing bad will ever happen. Not because suffering won't come. But because you are no longer afraid of it. You have walked through darkness. You have lost everything. You have stood in the void and faced yourself with nothing left to hold on to. Not searching. Not chasing. Just being. And that is the most powerful thing of all.